Hello, my friend. We are in my working pantry today, continuing on in this preparedness series. I'm going to share with you why I keep a stocked pantry, how I got it started, and what I store. As I've shared before, I think there's a lot of wisdom in being prepared for whatever life may bring. Having a prepared pantry brings me a whole lot of peace. If my husband lost a job or was no longer able to work, if we had a power outage or natural disaster hit, supply chain issues, which we've seen before, if world events somehow affected how we live, no matter the circumstances, my goal is to be prepared enough that my family can still thrive. When we thrive, we can help those around us. There's more freedom to give. It saves us so much money. It saves me many trips to the grocery store, and it really does offer peace of mind. I believe as a wife, a mom, and a keeper of my home, it's my job, my responsibility to steward my home and my family well, and this pantry is one way that I do that. Now, I keep a working pantry. What that means, if you're not familiar with that term, I am not just storing things up here for emergency purposes. It can be used for that, but we eat from this pantry. This is where I pull ingredients for our meals. This is our lifestyle. And I think having a working pantry, having that sort of mindset, there's wisdom there. I think that it discourages waste. When people kind of go into starting a pantry with emergency preparedness in mind, I think you can sometimes get tunnel vision and you just want to focus on rice and beans. I'm just saying that for an example. But you go into it not with a whole lot of planning, just what is simple and what is quick and cheap. Not saying there's necessarily anything wrong with that, but you need to have some sort of plan. I have limited resources. I am short on space. I have a budget in mind, and I'm not looking to be wasteful. I want to put to good use what I have here. The number one rule that I go by in keeping a pantry, and you'll hear this across the board most of the time, is store what you eat and eat what you store. We don't eat a whole lot of rice and beans. We eat more rice than we do beans. But it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me with the resources I have to go and buy a stockpile of beans. It's going to be wasteful if it's not something you're going to be cycling through. Now, I do have some dried beans in my pantry, but it's a very, very small portion of my pantry. So I'm not saying don't buy any dried beans. I'm just saying be wise about what you're putting in your pantry. Now, everyone's pantry is going to look different depending on each of our own circumstances, our diets, lots of things there. But for me personally, my goal is to have enough food for 6 months. Some things I have will last well beyond that. Some things won't even hit it to the 6-month mark. But I am using every ounce of space that I can. And that's just what I can maintain in my home. And you just kind of have to be good with that. This is my budget. This is the amount of space I have. I'm doing what I can. I'm working with what we got. And sometimes you just got to do that. Sometimes you got to get creative. If you have a really small space, perhaps storing things underneath a bed, putting up shelving on a wall that is just usually empty, or like a little corner that is somewhat out of the way. I mean, if you're really determined and you feel convicted to start storing a pantry, you can find a way. Now, I have been building up this pantry for a while. Really started amping it up about 7-ish years ago, 2017, when my daughter was born. I felt it was something that I needed to do for my family, just to help us out financially. Also, that's when I really started getting into canning and researching foods and what's in foods and wanting to have the best resources I could for my family on a limited budget. So I was just looking for ways to do that. So I started canning, doing a lot more cooking and baking from scratch, and then it just kind of spiraled from there. So 7 years really focusing on keeping a pantry, and it has built to this. Please don't get discouraged when seeing other people's pantries and you're either just starting or you're just not there yet. We all have to start somewhere, and it does add up much quicker than you think it may. My method when starting a pantry, or even continuing to build on an already existing pantry, is writing down what your family eats. It can be on a weekly basis, it could be on a monthly basis. Writing that down, picking 10 to 15 of your family's favorite meals. It can be all dinners to start, it could be some breakfasts and some dinners, and writing like a master ingredient list. You'll see there's actually a whole lot of overlap most times. And right there, that ingredient list is the start of your pantry. That's what you want to keep in a working pantry. The things that you are consistently making, the ingredients needed to make those meals. You want to focus on meals that are simple. They don't require a ton of effort to throw together. Inexpensive would be ideal, and things that don't have a mile-long ingredient list. Depending on your budget and other circumstances will decide how you move forward with it. You can, like I said, make that big ingredient, the master list. You can find the overlap, because where there's overlap, and there will be, you will use the same ingredients over multiple meals. You can then buy in bulk. That's going to save you in the long run, if at all possible. Or you can then shop, like buy one, get ones, look for the sales of those ingredients where you know you need a lot of it. And I always take advantage of grocery outlets. You can find a lot of things there cheap. It's a great way to build up your pantry a bit faster for less money. Now where I am, I'm in South Central PA. We have Amish. Amish are a great resource. If you have a local community of Amish or Mennonite, check out their stores. Oftentimes they buy things in bulk and offer them at a discounted price. So definitely check that out in terms of saving money when building a pantry. I know that is important. You can break it down further if that master ingredient list is just a bit too overwhelming. You can just focus on one meal. Buy what you need for that one meal, even if it's just an ingredient at a time, whatever your budget allows. If your budget is $5 extra for a week, then put that towards an ingredient to make one of those meals that you have written down. If $5 isn't enough for one of the ingredients, then start putting it into an envelope and start saving up until you have enough to get what you need. I know times are tough. The economy is trash and inflation is through the roof. So I understand doing things on a budget. You'll be surprised at how quickly those small purchases or 1 or 2 items adds up. You'll have a few meals ready to go in no time. Like I said, just don't focus on the big picture. You're not focusing on 6 months or even 3 months. Just focus on getting your family food for 1 week at a time and slowly build off of there. Another really great way to save some money is to see on your ingredient list what you can be making from scratch, because then you can just buy some ingredients in bulk, store them properly, and you're gonna save a whole bunch of money. And on top of that, you're gonna get higher quality food for your family. And sometimes that really cuts down on the amount of things that you're storing, because it's not a whole bunch of items, it's just certain items to make the other items, if that makes sense. You're gonna hear my kids upstairs. I think they're on their wiggle car, so sorry. So let's just say you're going to the store. Take your master ingredient list with you, know your budget, and then look for sales for whatever is on that ingredient list. Let's just say you need spaghetti sauce, you need 4 4 of your meals require a jar of spaghetti sauce. They're running a buy one, get one, or they're on a good deal. Obviously, I would go for the tomato sauce then. Even if that's the only thing that you add to your pantry that week, then it'll give you an ingredient you need for 4 meals. Having a plan like this where you're storing ingredients for set meals is going to alleviate some things. Number one is frustration, because you want to come down to your pantry, look at what you have, and know how to use it. You're going to know what meals you can make. I see so often people say, I've got this, this, and this, but I don't know what to do with it. That often comes from either going to the grocery store, purchasing random things that are on sale, or things that perhaps you just know are good for storage. They have a long shelf life. Or if you're into canning, it's just canning a bunch of random recipes because they look good, which I do that. I understand that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to have some sort of plan, because the second point is you will just be prone to waste. And we don't want to do that. We want to be good stewards of everything we have. We want to have a plan in place. If you do end up falling victim to the random buys or the off-the-wall canning recipes, a great resource to figure out what to do with them is the 3 Rivers Pantry Challenge, which goes on every January and February. I participate in it each year. It's put on by Jessica at 3 Rivers Homestead, and the purpose of that is using what you have. It's in not utilizing the grocery store. So people often get pretty creative with using what they have stored to make meals. So definitely go check that challenge out. I do have a playlist. I can put it here on the screen, and I can put it down in the description. We're gonna get into what I store now. I do store things with meals in mind, but I also store things in categories. By taking an item from each of those categories, I can throw together a meal pretty easily that is going to be nutritious and filling and also yummy. You can see I do a whole lot of canning. If you're not into canning for whatever reason, you don't have to be in order to keep a pantry. Store-bought is fine. I would suggest, however, sourcing canned goods that are either no salt added or low in sodium. They can often be very high in sodium, and it's not the good kind. So definitely watch out for that. My first category is proteins. Proteins. I freeze proteins. I jar them. I sometimes dry them for jerky, and occasionally I will freeze dry as well. I like having multiple methods of preserving. I don't like to keep all of my eggs in one basket. So I do keep a bunch of stuff in my freezer. I try to do as much as I can in jars. I do what I have room for, but I like having shelf-stable options. I purchase, or we raise our proteins in bulk. We do 1/4 to 1/2 of a beef a year. We do a cow a year. We do a whole hog. Our friends do that for us, and we raise chickens here. We do about 40 to 60 a year. So that saves a lot of money buying in bulk. Meat is not something that's ever on my grocery list. So that's one way this pantry saves me money. Buying in bulk is always going to be the better price option. So I do canned chicken, canned beef, canned venison, and I do canned pork as well. This is pork barbecue. I haven't personally tried canning any sort of seafood. I know you can, but it's good to have variety. And again, I am showing you things that, of course, are home canned here. Store-bought is fine. Those are the proteins that we consume. There are other things that can fall into that category if you have a different type of diet, but that's what we store. Next for us would be fruits and veggies. I do some things on my own jarred, but I do take advantage of the grocery store. There's a few things that I either don't grow or don't grow enough of to preserve. So I've got things like beets and different types of pickles. I have green beans and carrots from the store. I will pick up peas. That's not something I grew enough of. Corn is not something that I grow, but I like to have. Mushrooms are fun to add into different things and good for beef stroganoff. I also keep a stock of artichoke hearts. I like throwing them in casseroles. And then a few different tomato products that I don't do myself. Diced tomatoes. I have some cans of Rotel I like putting in a few different dishes, and then tomato paste is also something that I personally don't think is worth my time to can. I do have a little section here of canned beans. I keep refried beans, garbanzo, cannellini, navy, kidney beans, black beans, and then we also keep some baked beans on hand. It's just a really quick and easy side. No, these are not the greatest for you, but this is what I have the mental capacity for right now. At some point I want to can my own, but that works. Now I do keep some fresh produce in my pantry. It doesn't store the longest. I'm probably gonna end up canning or freeze drying a lot of these things. I do grow a whole bunch of potatoes. You can see they're already getting eyes on them, and they haven't even been in storage that long. It's still perfectly fine. I do try to come through here and periodically take off these eyes. Trying to move on to the next part of their life cycle and produce more potatoes. So I do keep a whole bunch of potatoes on hand, and then I grew a whole bunch of sweet potatoes as well. I have some purple potatoes here. My squash did absolutely terrible this year, so I have this lone little butternut squash. I have all of these shallots here that I need to do something with, like, desperately. My plans are to freeze dry, but time just has not allowed, so that is on the to-do list. But I keep some sort of onion or shallot on hand. Something to think about is if things ever did get tough, you want ways to make whatever you're eating taste good. That can be as simple as an onion or some garlic. There's a lot of flavor there, and it can really turn some plain meat or whatever into something that tastes a lot better. So I like keeping those more pungent items, really flavorful items on hand. All of my garlic was a total flop this year, so I don't have anything to show for that, but I do keep, I actually need to grab some more of this, but I'll just buy, why are you focusing on me? No. There we go. I'll buy some of the diced stuff in jars to keep. I also use a whole bunch of sun-dried tomatoes, so I keep a little stack of those. Fruits. I have different types of peaches here. I have some cherries in juice. I have strawberries in juice here. I have some mock pineapple. This is just zucchini. And I've got lots of applesauce. Actually, that's a project coming up. I have to can a whole bunch more applesauce. I've got apple pie filling. And then I don't do a whole lot of jarring fruit on my own. I do have a whole bunch here from the store. Let me show you. Down here I have some things from the store. I've got pumpkin, crushed pineapple, I have some tropical fruit blends, I've got mandarin oranges, pears, and I also have some blueberries there on the end. This is an area I'm still working on building up. Each time I go to the grocery store, I'll pick up like 2 to 4 cans of fruit, and they just get stacked here. Now I do have a whole bunch of freeze-dried fruits and veggies that I freeze-dried myself. We do have a freeze dryer. I'm very thankful for it. It's a wonderful tool. I said I'm a gardener. I've got a big garden. I've got a lot of produce coming at one time, and that's very helpful to make sure things aren't getting wasted and they're getting preserved before they start to go bad. So I do have a whole bunch of big totes here that I have stocked to the brim with produce coming out of the garden, but also some things that I find in bulk. I've got things like bananas and mangoes and avocados, stuff like that is freeze-dried. I almost forgot to mention, I do utilize an extra fridge we have for keeping some produce. I will keep celery and carrots and mainly apples in our extra fridge. They last a really long time. The apples will honestly last from now until next spring if you get certain varieties. Certain ones are better for storage and they like a certain temp. I want to say it's between 45 and 50 degrees in the fridge, so they store well. And I mean, carrots are great. Celery I can keep for about 3 months or so at a time. Grains is my next category. I store flour in 5-gallon buckets in Mylar bags with oxygen absorbers. Pretty much all of my grains, when I go and purchase them, I purchase them in bulk. I will divide them out into bags because the big bag won't always fit. Divide them out into smaller bags, and I will freeze them for 24 to 48 hours. Make sure you do that to kill off any little critters or bugs that could be in there. There's nothing worse than investing money and having it spoil because of bugs and eggs and yucky stuff. So make sure you store it properly. When you pull it out of the freezer, you want to make sure there's no condensation happening before you go to seal it up in Mylar as well. So I keep them in 5-gallon buckets with a 5-gallon Mylar bag and an oxygen absorber. They will last a very long time, like 10 plus years. Ground flour. Wheat berries I also store. They're going to last even longer, like 20 to 30 years if stored the same way. Oats, I do keep bulk oats in sealed 5-gallon buckets, but I also have some just kind of for daily use because I do keep some things with more emergency storage in mind, some of those bulk grains, and then I will have bags out on a shelf as well. I've got some rolled oats here. Rice I store the same way. Keep in mind, white rice is going to store longer than brown rice because of the fat content there. Brown rice will go rancid quite a bit faster, so I store a whole bunch of basmati rice in the same way, and then I have smaller containers of it upstairs for more daily use. If you are gluten-free, I do have a little bit of gluten sensitivity. I will keep some 1-to-1 gluten-free flour on hand, so I have that here as well. I also have, where did you go? I like quinoa. I keep quinoa on hand. I also have things like barley and of course pasta. Pasta you can store in the 5-gallon buckets again with the Mylar and the oxygen absorbers. It's going to last a really long time like that. I have some like that, and then I have some that I just pick up from the local Amish. You can find them for like between 75 cents and $1, so I just grab a few every once in a while, and this is what I pull from more regularly. Some gluten-free pasta as well, and then I just have a few of those things down here, and then upstairs I keep a whole bunch more pasta for more, meal planning and everyday use. We've got proteins, we've got fruit and veg, we've got grains. Now we're gonna focus on fats. So I have a few things here. I will pick up some cooking sprays when I find them on sale. I will keep olive oil on hand. I like to also have, this is lard that I rendered from pig. I have tallow, I have coconut oil, and I also keep butter frozen, obviously in my freezer, but I keep a whole bunch of that. You can also grab some ghee, some clarified butter. That is fairly shelf stable. Just keep in mind with most fats, they're not going to store as long. Anything with a higher fat content is going to, be susceptible to going rancid way sooner. These things I don't keep a huge stockpile of. I like to keep 1 or 2 containers of it here because it really only lasts about 18 months or so. Just depends a little bit on storing conditions and all those things, but I don't keep a huge inventory of those things, just enough that if I run out of one upstairs that I'm currently using, I can come down and know I have a spare. Now we have some sweeteners. I use mainly natural sweeteners. I will use maple syrup, so I keep a nice stock of this. I use it in baking, flavoring our coffee, of course for breakfast things. I also have some coconut sugar. I use a whole bunch of this. I will store, I have a big bag here of powdered sugar, but I just purchased that recently. I don't use a whole lot of it, but we're coming into baking season and we have birthday season now. And I don't love, you can make your own powdered sugar. I have a video on that, but I don't love it for icing. It's just a little bit too gritty for my taste. So I will purchase some powdered sugar. I will store organic raw cane sugar in a 5-gallon bucket, just in a Mylar bag, no oxygen absorber needed. All sugar items pretty much store indefinitely, so there is that. I do store some brown sugar just for ease of use. You can make your own. I have molasses here to do that. I have a video on making your own brown sugar, your own powdered sugar. I can link if you want to know how to do that. And then of course, honey. I keep a lot of honey on hand. I do a lot of baking with this as well. That kind of takes us into some baking supplies, things like baking powder, baking soda, or vice versa there. You're gonna need cocoa powder. I buy that in bulk. I do keep some cornstarch. I buy it organic. It's a little pricey, so I only keep a little bit of that. I don't have it stored down here, just upstairs in my kitchen pantry. And some arrowroot powder. That is a cornstarch alternative. If you are someone that bakes gluten-free a lot, all of your things you need for that, I have some xanthan gum, and then vanilla. Vanilla is something I always keep a pretty large stockpile of. I use a lot of it. Yeast is very important. Now that does not, some of these baking items don't have the longest shelf life, so I don't keep a very large store of them either. Yeast does not have a long shelf life. However, I keep mine in the freezer. I buy it in the big bulk packages, and I have used yeast from the freezer older than 5 years, and it has worked great. That is where I store it. As soon as I open a container, I'll put it either in a mason jar or in a Ziploc bag, store it in the freezer in between uses, and it keeps for a really long time. But I do like to have a pretty large stockpile of yeast. Times ever get tough, all you need is some yeast, some water, some salt, and some flour. All pretty easy things to store, and you can fill bellies. Lots of different types of bread. Now, something else that I'm gonna do a video on here shortly. I know it's not for everybody, but I think it's a skill everyone should at least have some knowledge of, and that is sourdough, because you don't need yeast. You can make it yourself. Really good skill to have if need be. And I mean, sourdough has its benefits, and I think it tastes really good too. So we'll do a video series on that soon. Let's talk seasonings, spices, and then like sauces, things that you can like zhuzh up a meal, jazz it up a little bit, and give it some more flavor. So I've got a whole bunch of jams and jellies here. You can use them in baking, obviously in breakfast items. I use them to glaze meats. You can put them in different sauces, lots of uses there. Then I've got things like mustard. This is a peach ale mustard, super good. I've got peach barbecue sauce. This is the leftover syrup from cowboy candy. It's a great marinade for meats. I've got some homemade barbecue sauce. I have plum sauce for like Asian inspired dishes. I've got some homemade ketchup that doesn't really taste like ketchup, but it's still really good, and I use it as a barbecue sauce. I've got some, I believe it's called Victorian barbecue sauce. It uses rhubarb and raisins, really yummy for like pulled pork or brisket type sandwiches. I've got pizza sauce. Over here I have a whole bunch of different salsas. There's obvious ways to use this, but I also like to add it to some other sauces or other dishes or marinate meat in them. It's just great to have a variety of things to switch up your food. You can totally transform a meat and a veggie based on the sauce you are using, so you don't get bored with things. I do keep store-bought ketchup and mustard bouillon base. I grabbed this big one from Costco. It was organic, pretty good ingredients here. Some of these you have to be careful. I also keep Worcestershire. They're all tucked back in there, coconut aminos or a soy sauce. And I have some ranch dressing down there too, but I do have a video on making your own dressings as well. It's nice to know, just, having some ingredients on hand, what you can do to make the other things. Like I said, it narrows down, a whole bunch of stuff that you have to have in your pantry if you just have the ingredients. I also have this big bin here of discount seasoning and spices that I found. Most of these were like somewhere around $1. So I have a variety of things in here that I will pull from as I run out upstairs in my other kitchen pantry. And then of course, salt and pepper. I purchase my salt bulk from Redmond's. Really brings the price down if you purchase it in bulk, and this is just really high quality stuff. It's also great to have on hand for preserving meat and other things. We need salt in our diet. It's not something that you want to skip out on in your pantry, and this is the good stuff. It's not devoid of any of the minerals that we need for daily function. So I do have a code for Redmond's if you're interested in buying some bulk salt, and I will put that here on the screen. You can find it down in the description as well. The next category, I guess we'll call liquids. Of course, water is very important. You should aim for a minimum of 1 gallon per person per day. That is a lot of water, especially if you have a large family. So we do what we can with the space we have. We'll keep some gallon jugs and some water bottles, but then the next step would be to have some sort of water filtration system. We have a Berkey and we keep extra filters on hand. We also have some Life Straws type things. They'll filter like, I don't know, somewhere around 1,000 gallons of water. Also vinegars, vinegar for cooking, vinegar for preserving, and vinegar for cleaning. So I've got apple cider vinegar, I have white vinegar, and I have balsamic down there. I also have some malt vinegar too for French fries. Right now I'm dairy free. I'm working on healing my gut because that wasn't always an issue for me, so I am hopeful that I can reverse that by healing my gut. But for now, I need a dairy alternative. This is organic oat milk that I got from Costco. Oat milk is the only thing I can tolerate. I don't do well on nut milks either. I've tried goat milk. That's a no-go. We don't have access to sheep milk, but I would love to try that. So for now, it's just the oat milk, and I at least found organic. You have to be careful because oats are like heavily sprayed. It's one of those crops that you will almost always find glyphosate on it. So it is what it is. I don't use this a whole lot, but at least it's organic. So I do keep some of these on hand. The rest of my family drinks milk. Of course, if there was ever an issue in getting milk, I like to keep some powdered. This is not ideal, but it still works. This is whole milk powder from Hoosier Hill Farm. I just got it off of Amazon. It's a pretty decent price and the reviews are good. Quality, I mean, it tastes pretty good. So I will use this in baking, or if I'm making like sausage gravy or cream chip beef, this is a great alternative. This stuff from Augustin Farms, more dry milk powder. So the Hoosier Hill stuff does not last as long. There's not as long of a shelf life. I want to say that one is like maybe 2 years unopened. Once you open it, I think you need to use it within 9 months and you should keep it in the fridge. This stuff unopened, I want to say it was 20 years. So that is awesome. I've been slowly stocking up on these things, and of course I can open it and use it whenever. Like I said, I don't really keep much of anything in my pantry that I'm not going to be constantly rotating through and using. If you are a coffee drinker, store some coffee, store some filters too. I also keep a whole bunch of tea on hand, herbal teas, and then just some like fruity type teas, but they're upstairs in my other pantry. The last two things in my like liquid category, I've got coconut milk. I use this in a variety of recipes, but also I love cooking rice in this, and some evaporated milk. I mainly have it for pumpkin pie. 'Tis the season, it's coming up here. I have used this in the past when I was completely out of regular milk. It was okay in baking or in cooking. The last category in this shelf-stable pantry is meals or different foods that are just ready to eat. You can grab and either just quickly heat up, or you can just grab and start eating it right away. I have a video on this, but I like to can meals in a jar. These are ready to go. They're pressure canned. All you gotta do is heat them up. You can stretch these by adding some sort of grain to them. I like to either serve them with like rice, sometimes quinoa, depending on what it is. I've got beef stew here. You could add some noodles to this. I've got, I think this is chicken chili verde. I have some, what are you? I don't have these labeled. Don't be like me. This is a chicken noodle soup base. That's what it is. And then I've got some other bases here for stroganoff. Obviously, I'd want to add some noodles to that one. I also have things like beef jerky, yogurt bites, fruit strips, some mac and cheese, of course, different types of crackers, chips and pretzels, animal crackers, popcorn, peanut butter is a great thing to store. I've got chocolate chips, another great morale booster. I use them a lot in baking. Just some things for treats, some things to fill bellies until the next meal, and some of these things you can use to jazz up a meal as well. I do count my fridge, like I said, as a layer of my pantry, so there are some things I keep stocked in there as well. Things, mainly dairy stuff, so heavy cream, cream cheese, sour cream, Greek yogurt, different types of cheese. I also keep some cheese in the freezer. What else do I have here? And then, like I said, I will store some fruits and veggies in there as well. The final thing that I store, you can see some of it here, some more emergency type foods and buckets. I have them. I don't necessarily recommend them. I have them for like just an added layer of peace of mind. If all else fails, we have these to go to. I don't like to recommend the buckets with the pre-made meals so much because quite honestly, they're terrible for you. And like I said, I don't like having anything in my pantry that I'm not going to be rotating through and like want to eat. I don't really want to give my family these things, but it's here if need be. And honestly, another reason it's here is because I got them on a major sale, and it would have been silly, honestly, to not take advantage of that. And like I said, it's just an added layer of protection. I don't make them a big part of my pantry, but I do have a few here. I will say, however, if you would like to get into having some more emergency food on hand, go for the whole food ingredients that you can just put together to make a meal. So like plain veggies, plain fruits, plain proteins, eggs, milk powder, those sort of things. There's nothing wrong with those. There's no added chemicals and preservatives and yucky stuff. They're just what they say they are, so much better for you. And then you still have that added layer of protection in emergency supply in some freeze-dried things. So a little recap. We're getting a list together, right? Or at least a plan moving forward. We're not gonna focus on the big picture. You want to start small, something that is achievable. It's nice to see something getting accomplished. It's encouraging, right? So start with 1 week or even one meal, something to get started, and then just go on from there, from 1 week to 3 weeks to whatever your goal will be. Start checking off some of that master ingredient list or building up variety in some of those categories that I mentioned that make it easy to put a meal together. Sometimes the hardest part is just starting. Taking that first step, because it can seem really overwhelming. I get that. I've been there. Taking that first step, no matter how small it is just putting you onto the right path. It will amount to something. You will be thankful for that something, and it'll put you that much further ahead than you were before you did it. I want to see you thrive, no matter the circumstances. Remember what I said before. When we're prepared the best we can be, when we're able to thrive, or at least do well in those tougher situations, we can then be a solution to the problem going on around us, if there is one. We don't contribute to that need. We help people with a need. We can be a light and we can be a blessing. I think there is great wisdom and peace in a prepared pantry. I would so appreciate your support on this video and other videos in this little preparedness series, because it is not my normal stuff. I know there's a lot of you who really want just the normal stuff, and I will get back to it. I'm just pivoting here for a little bit. I feel there is a need to bring awareness to this, to share some knowledge that I do have on it, some experience that I have on it. I believe that is my task, and I'm just doing it. So I will get back to the normal stuff here soon, so just bear with me, but I would appreciate your support, giving this video a thumbs up, throwing something down in the comments, whether that is an emoji or something you have to share with others or me or any of the like. I appreciate it. Share it with anybody who you think would benefit from this. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending time with me. You have a blessed week, and I will see you next time. Take care.